hope you enjoyed the plenary session. We are about to start the parallel session now. I request you to kindly be seated. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to welcome you to the 14th parallel session in improving economic measurements. Our chair for the session will be Ambassador Dr. Sankar Prasad Sarma, former Vice Chairman, National Planning Commission of Nepal. I request him to take his seat on the dais. Now I request our chair to conduct the session. I pass this floor to him now.
Thank you. Good morning and namaste to everybody. As she has already mentioned that the theme of this panel discussion is improving economic measurement. We have two presenters on this session. I would like to invite Dr. Martin Rama, Chief Economist, South Asia region from the World Bank. I also would like to invite Dr. Abraham George. He is the Director of Institute for Sustainable Development and Governance, India. We have 4 panelists to discuss on the presentation and any other issues that is being raised on the measurement of data. Dr. Homurti Panda is the advisor, National Planning Commission of Nepal, and visiting fellow, College of Asia and Pacific, Australian National University, Canberra. Mr. Suman Rajaryal is the Director General of Central Bureau of Statistics, Nepal. We have another panelist, Dr. Vishwa Paudel, Senior Economist. He is also from the National Planning Commission of Nepal. Mr. Jubair Faisal Abbasi. He is from the Impact Consulting, Pakistan. I would like to welcome all the presenters and the panelists in this very special session. As somebody was mentioning in the inaugural session that this is something slightly unusual session compared to regional integration, connectivity, e-trade and things like that. But this is very important, I think, for a number of reasons. First of all, I think we have been talking about, if we are talking about the data and data collection, we have been doing that in most of the developing countries, including South Asia and particularly Nepal, on the traditional basis. But there are some new technologies that are being evolved and being utilized for collecting the data to a large extent in terms of large data set. Not only the technology, but also I think I have seen people using, experts using different other methodology like intensity of light in a city and its correlation with so many other variables. Internet uses and cell phone uses and number of new advanced technology have emerged in this area, but we are largely unaware of these things and we have not been utilized those things. As for example, when I saw something being done by international expert a couple of years ago, correlating some of our variables in Nepal with the intensity of light, the usual question in Nepal was something like Nepal suffers from load shedding, heavy load shedding. How can you relate with the light intensity with so many other variables and come up with these conclusions? So not only that, I think there are a number of problems related with the data. I think if we are talking about Nepal's case and most of South Asia, the informal sector plays a dominant role in many of the economic data and activities. As for example, if we include all of the agriculture sector as a non-informal sector, I think that 96% of Nepal, I would say close to 96% of our employment is generated in the informal sector. So similarly, I think in Nepal, government normally changes the definition of urban population. So if we are talking about 2013, our urban population was 17%. If we talk in 2016, our urban population is 42%. But very recently, Nepal is going through the restructuring. So now the urban population probably will be more than 50%. So how do you classify the data? The quality of data, I think, is also very important. Talking about even the World Bank, as for example, we did the Nepal Living Standard Survey in 2003 and 4, 10, and then 96, 97. And there was a change in the definition of the poverty, because the basket that we were considering for the poor people was changed. Otherwise, by 2003 and 4, if we had gone and used the same definition that we used in 1996 and 97, Nepal's poverty incidence declined to 13% in 2003 and 4. But not so. I think if you see the statistics, today it's close to 21%. If we talk about the national poverty line, if we talk about $1 a day, it's something different, about 16%. So Nepal, I think we also have another problem now. We used to have 75 districts and 5 regions, but now 7 regions, 7 provinces, and we'll have 753 municipalities. So I think a lot of issues, a lot of problems in this area. So how do we deal with all these kind of things through new technologies and new methodology? I think that's the question we are discussing today, which will be extremely interesting, not only to the National Planning Commission, Central Bureau of Statistics, but for all of us, I guess. So we'll see how our presenters can convince us using the new technology and methodology in economic measurement of data. I think without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Martin Rama for your presentation. You have about 15 minutes. Thank you.
Sharma, distinguished panelists, many thanks for being here and for inviting me to this session. And before I go into the nuts and bolts of what I would like to present, let me tell you why I believe, and more generally at the World Bank, we believe that these kind of topics are very much connected to regional integration. I think South Asia is a very special region. At one level, one could say it's the least integrated region in the world. Integration processes are stuck, there are tensions, there's conflict, there are different speeds. At another level, it's a very homogeneous people, a very integrated region through its people. And so one thing that we have been trying to promote is everything that relates to people-to-people exchanges, which is one way of integration which is very important. And that involves, in particular, how people think about issues. So think of issues like river basin modeling, thinking in the same way about water flows. Think about the hydromet projects that we're supporting. All of these are ways to bring together people who use the same tools, think in the same way, and are very influential in the role of advisors, generators of knowledge and information. And for us, a statistical agenda falls in that category. Thinking about growth, thinking about GDP, thinking about measurement, understanding trends in the same way is also one way to move forward together. If we think of people from statistical offices exchanging information on how they do things, teaming up on developing tools, we believe that that has an opportunity. And the point I will make in closing is that at some point South Asia was very advanced relative to the rest of the world statistically. And that, in terms of a pride of a region, can also be an agenda going forward. But let me start on the nuts and bolts, and I will not go through all the details. 15 minutes are already usually 1 or 2 of them, so I better keep it short. What I will present is based on our biannual report, which is called South Asia Economic Focus, which basically takes stock of recent developments, gives an outlook, has a snapshot country by country, and we issue this report every year twice in April and October. And the third part which is called In Focus, deals with a specific topic that may be of interest to all the countries in the region. It's not country specific. And in this case, we call the topic Growth Out of the Blue. And the title is not innocent. In American English, when you say that something comes out of the blue, it means you don't know where it's coming from. In fact, you don't trust it very much. And I would say that with some of our statistics, we feel that way. Can't you say, oh, the growth rate is this, and you wonder, as Dr. Sharma said, is this right? Can we be sure with countries that are 90 to 95% informal and with all the difficulties to capture economic activity in the informal sector, which countries that have conflict situations, can we be sure about these numbers? And can we do something to improve it? And then the out of the blue has a different meaning, which is the satellite, which is the fact that now there are technologies that provide new information that we are not so used to. We are used to going through surveys and censuses, but the world has changed. And now there is cell phone traffic, there is satellite imagery, and so on and so forth. And so the question is, can we use some of this information to gain new insights? And I will try to convince you that one can get new insights. But before I do that, let me preface it by saying that this is not a plea to give up on the traditional way of doing statistics. This is a plea to strengthen statistical systems and to use many other sources of information. Like, for instance, one example I want to give is administrative records. All of the countries in the region have a wealth of administrative records from Ministries of Education, from Ministries of Health, but they are not in a format that can be used, that can be retrieved, that can be curated and generate data in no time. Now, here the focus is just GDP and it's the satellite imagery. These satellites, there is a program that started many years ago that had nothing to do with economic measurement. This was a program of the US Air Force, really to provide information on weather conditions to Air Force pilots. And so what these satellites started doing was just to measure cloud coverage and weather events. But in passing, by the same token, they were also capturing light. All of these satellites were passing at the same time in the day, at the same time in the night, through different places and taking images. Now, this is not information that can be used as such. You have night with clouds, night without clouds. You have night with full moon, night where the moon is not there. You may be closer to the equator or closer to the poles, and so the radiance you get from the sun on the other side of the Earth is different. So it requires a lot of adjustment. And then the satellites change. Here there is one satellite, but over time, over one country, you have different satellites passing, and it's like different people have different eyesight. Satellites have decay, like people who end up wearing glasses at some point. So what satellites see after a few years is not the same as they saw when they started. But that can be qualified. So NASA at some point released a huge amount of information on an annual basis, starting in 1982, that was already clean. And then since 2013, it has released monthly data that is very precise. You can go by the square kilometer, but needs cleaning. And so what we did is part of this cleaning of making sure that it's only when there are no clouds, that is filtered for radiance, that is adjusted for the moon cycle, and so on and so forth. And when I say these are very imperfect information, I will show you it's a very imperfect information, but it has several advantages. It's available on a monthly basis. In our region, only 2 countries have quarterly GDP data, all the rest have annual GDP data, so this is monthly. It is available by the square kilometer. In the countries in the region, you sometimes have GDP data for states or provinces, but it's not totally current. You have sometimes for districts, but it's really outdated. And so the question is, can we combine, not replace, can we combine insights from this kind of data with the standard data? Now, as part of this South Asia Economic Focus, we conduct a survey of, we have a network of researchers and advisors, and some of you are part of that network, to whom we send questionnaires and we interact, and what do you think? And one of the questions is, when a GDP growth figure comes up, how far do you expect that figure to be from the real GDP growth rate? And you see that across the region, these are 200, the level is 250 people in the region, and there were about 60 respondents. A dozen think that it will be within 0.5 percentage points of reality, but you have almost 40% who think that the difference will be at least 1%, at least 0.5%, and then you have another 40% who think that it will be 1 percentage point apart. We also face a situation where there are many revisions to GDP data. Here it is for India, and it's the distance between the final estimate of GDP growth and the first estimate. And you see that it varies a lot. It can go from correction downward by 0.5% to correction upward by 1.5%. On average, the final figure in India is 0.5 percentage points higher than the initial figure. So we are having these things that imply that good understanding of economic development, which is a public good, is not totally solid. And so, on the other hand, we have this nightlight data, which seems to provide something. So here you have, on the horizontal axis, you have the intensity of lights over the surface of the country. On the vertical axis, you have the GDP of the country. So of course, when you have a country like the light green on top is India, which has the overall GDP, not GDP per capita, the highest, while if you take Bhutan in orange at the bottom, or you take Maldives in yellow, GDP is small. But you see that overall, for each of the colors, each dot is 1 year, nightlight intensity goes well with GDP. I will not go into the details. This is an approach that has been developed over the last 5 years across countries, and what we find is that we replicate what has been done worldwide. For South Asia it works, and it works even slightly better than it works for other countries. Now, one point that Dr. Sharma made is, but how about countries where you have blackouts and parts that are in the dark and so on and so forth? So we replicated the analysis where countries are classified from the richest on the right to the poorest on the left, and we studied the correlation. And it turns out that the correlation is stronger in the poorest countries. This is the estimated relationship. In the jargon, it's called an inverse Henderson elasticity. And you see that it's stronger for poorer countries. In poorer countries, you get a bit of development, you get more light. Richer countries, they will not switch off the light if there is a recession. They are rich enough so that it doesn't matter. So if you take OECD countries, night lights are not a good indicator. But if you take poor countries, on the contrary, you can have it. We also noticed that night lights are a good information for manufacturing and services. They are a very poor predictor for agriculture. Agriculture in developing countries happens in the dark, in good years and in bad years. So for agriculture, it doesn't work. And then the question is, can it be used for GDP growth? And let me just show you this figure, growth, not levels. So before I was looking at from 1992 to 93 to 94. Here is, can I use the change in night lights to say something about the change in GDP? And the dots are points where on the horizontal axis you have what happened to the GDP growth rate, and is up between 0 and 10, with a few exceptions that are higher. And on the vertical axis is the predicted GDP growth. And you see that we get a relatively good line. It's not extraordinary, but it's a relatively good line. Now, we use other indicators typically to forecast GDP growth. We use imports, exports, manufacturing, industrial production, business confidence. And we asked our survey, our group of researchers and advisors in South Asia, which ones they think are very good and which ones they think they are good. And you see that on average, nobody thinks that the predictors we use, they are no more than 25% or 30% who think that they are good predictors. Night lights are in that range. They are not an extraordinary predictor, but combined with these other predictors, they do a better job. So let me show you a few things that we can do. I will not go into the technicalities. This is for longer periods, starting 1992 to 2016. You have two lines. You have on black the measured GDP. You have on blue the predicted GDP if you use night lights. And you see that in general, perhaps not in Sri Lanka, but in general, the two lines go pretty well together. We also see that if we take a big country like India, and we look at the state level, and we predict GDP by state using NILEX and GDP by state just as measured by the statistical office, we get a relatively good correlation, 0.85. We even get a good correlation at the district level. So these allow us to do things like this. This is a map of GDP per capita in all of South Asia at the district level. This is not available from any statistical office. This is done just using satellite imaging. And it has very interesting insights on where you have the lowest GDP, where you have the highest rates. All big cities in South Asia, even in Afghanistan, are on the group of relatively high GDP. This is something that we are getting from this information. But let me show you, and I will finish with this. What we did is to apply it to a few controversial episodes that happened in South Asia in recent years and see can we get new insights. And I choose deliberately controversial episodes because at the start I said information and agreement on how we think about issues is one way to build trust that we're seeing things the same way. So we took several episodes. One was revision of national accounts. India and Sri Lanka revised the national accounts, and there was huge debate in both countries as to whether there was manipulation, whether this was credible, and so on and so forth. Second, very specific for here, is the year 2015 in Nepal. Nepal experienced violent earthquakes, had a huge trade disruption with India. What did that do to GDP? Do we really know? Third is conflict in Afghanistan, where we try to see what does conflict do to economic activity. And last one is demonetization in India, something that has been very controversial. What was the impact of demonetization? Let me go take 1 minute on each and I stop. First, the change in series, in GDP series. I take here India, and I take the two series. In black is the old series at 2004 prices. In blue is the new series at 2011 prices. And you see that overall, this is the correlation between the GDP in the old series and in the new series with the light intensity. You see that overall the correlation is pretty good in both series. It's about 0.7%, which is very high. It seems to be slightly better in the old series, but the difference is not statistically significant. And again, you see something very interesting. Just now, that gives us, on a quarterly basis, a 0.7 or 70% correlation. Second, this is Nepal. This is Nepal in 2015. And we compare lights in the year 2015 with the previous year in detail. And what you see is that these are the growth predicted by NILEX, not the official growth. If we look by NILEX, the earthquakes did not have a significant impact on aggregate GDP. And there is a good reason for that. The districts that were hit harder by earthquakes were poor to begin with. They were poor before, they were poor after. That didn't make a big difference. But look at the trade disruption. Starting in August and going down to October. If we trust NILEX, there was a huge shock there. Then the economy bounced back, basically bounced back in November. But there was a huge shock. Now, if we do the same analysis for Nepal by districts, we see much more. So you look in the upper panel, you have on the left the districts that were affected by the earthquake, and on the right the districts that were not directly affected by the earthquake. And you see that there was growth in the districts not affected by the earthquake, but there was a decline in the districts affected by the earthquake. And the decline was much bigger, if you look at the bottom panel, in the districts that were bordering India during the trade disruption, where GDP decline was about 9% on average. So we can get a very granular analysis of what happened. Third, conflict. Here we took the Battle of Kunduz in Afghanistan. Kunduz fell twice over a period of a few months. On the top panel you have the casualties, the number of people killed or injured. And you see September 15 and April 16 were combat periods, very intense. And in the bottom panel, you see what happened to NILEX during the entire period. So you see that even in the period when Kunduz was recaptured by the coalition forces, it was suffering. And we extended you will not be able to read this, so let me tell you the story. We extended this to district by district. We analyzed the correlation between casualties from conflict and nightlights. And we found that conflict has an impact within the month, within the quarter, within the year it vanishes. But so when you have a surge in conflict, you get at least a quarter loss of GDP. Last one, demonetization. What we found with demonetization, I may be missing one figure. What we found with demonetization in India is that at the aggregate level, it had an impact. The legends are not totally right, so forgive me about the legends. You see that in November and December, one of the lines, the black line, is clearly below the other line. This is a comparison between the 2 years. So November and December, there was an impact in India, but it only lasted for 2 months. On the other hand, if we look on districts, we see that in urban districts, in the top panel, there was no impact. Rural districts suffered because they were more informal. If we look at districts with high banking access, the impact was very minor. With low banking access, it was huge. If we look at districts with many regular wage earners, there was growth, but in districts that were very informal, there was no growth. So this is just to say there is a potential out there to get more information, and there is a potential for people who are technicians and advisors and experts to also get together and see how to use this information. And let me just finish with a little story. I started saying at some point South Asia was ahead of the world in statistics. I know it's difficult to believe. I'm at the World Bank. Our thinking on poverty comes from South Asians. Mahbubul Haq, who was chief economist of Pakistan, was the one who convinced Robert McNamara, president of the World Bank, that the focus should be on poverty and there should be ways to measure poverty. He then went on to UNDP and invented what you all know, the Human Development Index, that comes from Mahbubul Haq. Mahalanobis, the first director of the Indian Statistical Office Institute, he invented the modern household survey. All the world is doing household surveys now, but that comes from a time when in India he had the idea that there should be representative data for every district, even districts that didn't have a road for access, and he managed to do it. So at some point, our thinking was coming from South Asia. And in a region where making progress on the politics of integration is so difficult, perhaps making progress on the ideas is something where people like you, where the South Asia group that gets together every year in the South Asia Economic Summit can think about making progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Martin Rama, for a very interesting presentation. I guess when I was in US a couple of years ago, I think there were people who were interested to do research in Nepal. I think they were giving some examples to me. We can count the number of tigers in Nepal, or Forest A or Forest B, number of tourists going to Mount Everest or Annapurna region by satellite images. And not only that, I think I found out that there are some interesting data, because there were some problems in the Middle East, and then this guy used to find out how many people came out on the street for protest, because different countries give different numbers. And the opposition in any country will exaggerate the number, and the government will say, no, I think that's not true. These are the only people who protested on the street. So he was using the satellite data to count, or I would say to estimate the number of people who came out on the street to protest against certain things in certain countries. This is amazing. I think this is very interesting also. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Abraham Judge. He is the director of Institute for Sustainable Development and Governance for a presentation. You have also 15 minutes. Thank you.
Respected Chair, fellow panelists and dear friends, we were listening to a wonderful presentation of measuring through light night intensity by Dr. Martin Rama. I would like to focus on an entirely different aspect, sustainable development goals, and how effectively we would be able to monitor the progress in achieving SDGs in South Asia. South Asia, with a population of almost 20% of the world, accounting for some 37% of the poorest people and half of the total malnourished children, and with enormous development gaps and infrastructural gaps. For South Asia, achieving sustainable development goals is very crucial. And for that, we require huge amount of data. And that data demand require coordinated efforts at the global, regional, national and subnational levels. Today, most of the South Asian countries do not have ample statistical capacity to carry out accurate tracking of the progress in implementing SDGs. But good quality data, reliable data, disaggregated data, which is available on a regular basis, is very important for making informed decisions at every level of the government. But now, the thing is that we are facing paucity of data, and it is affecting the measurement of the progress which is affecting, in implementing the SDGs. And in order to ensure that no one is left behind, we need to get disaggregated data in a much larger scale. For example, lots of data gaps are existing with regard to vulnerable groups like migrants, refugees, minorities, indigenous people, etc. So if you want to take any policy decision effectively with regard to tackling the problems faced by such vulnerable groups, the availability of data is a must. One positive aspect of pursuing the Millennium Development Goals by developing countries is that in the process, we were able to strengthen our national statistical systems. And for disaggregated data, we were mainly using the population census and also various household sample survey data for all our requirements. But in spite of that, even today, according to United Nations, 30% of the developing countries are unable to register even 90% of the births that are occurring in each country. Similarly, 40% of the developing countries are unable to register deaths that are occurring. Almost 75% of the deaths, at least 75% of the deaths that is occurring in these countries. So there is a need for strengthening the statistical capacity at every level of governance. Now, I will just Sustainable Development Goals, as we all know, involves 17 goals, 169 Sustainable Development Goals, there are altogether 17 of them, and it comprises of 169 targets and also more than 230 indicators. And they together, they are going to address 5 P's, the letter P: people, planet, prosperity, peace and partnership. And let's take the 169 targets. Even though there are 169 targets, that doesn't mean that each target is applicable to every country. Targets are defined as aspirational and global, with each government has its freedom to setting its own national targets, taking into account the national circumstances. And once that is done, the question is how to incorporate these targets into our national planning processes, policies and strategies. Then again, how to implement them. And finally, our main concern is how to measure or monitor the progress. And there are more than 230 indicators. And these indicators are meant for monitoring the progress of implementation at the regional, national and subnational levels. And these indicators can also be developed at the regional and national levels. According to UN Statistical Commission, they have classified these indicators into 3 tiers. Tier 1 indicators have established methodology and also ample data available. Tier 2 indicators have established methodology but insufficient data. Tier 3 indicators have yet to develop the final methodology. We have yet to arrive at the final methodology. 60% of the total indicators belong to Tier 1 and Tier 2 category, while 40% belong to Tier 3 category, where the methodology is being developed. Last year, in 2016, March, UN Statistical Commission, they agreed upon a global indicator framework. But even this would be subject to future modifications. And these various indicators, more than 230 of them, they have to be reviewed on a regular basis. Refinements and improvements have to be made over the years. And some of the new indicators have also to be developed. Yesterday also, one of the speakers was talking about transboundary impacts. So many production and consumption activities taking place in one country will have its impact on other countries. And it could be positive or negative. For example, if a developed country would like to extend an official development assistance to a poor African country, and if it helps to improve, help it to achieve certain sustainable development goals to a certain extent, that is a positive transboundary impact. Another example is if a developed country gives huge subsidies to its farmers, thereby depressing the world prices, that may adversely affect the farm exporters from developing countries. This is a negative transboundary impact. What I wanted to say is that as we progress with regard to implementing the Sustainable Development Goals, we will come across different situations where new indicators would have to be developed. So, for monitoring effectively the progress made with regard to the implementation of Sustainable Development Goals, we have to strengthen the collection, processing, analysis and dissemination of data. And this has to be done at the global level, national level, and subnational levels. So, but there are innumerable challenges, and these SDGs are mostly indivisible and integrated. This means that achieving one goal may require action in many other goals. For instance, poverty reduction, it is goal number 1. In order to attain it, we may have to work actively in goal 9, economy and decent work, and also goal 10, reducing inequalities. Similarly, if you are improving education, that's SDG 4, that will bring benefits in the health status, that is goal 3, income and employment, goals 1, 2, and 8, like that. For meeting this kind of a situation, now many people suggest that there should be an integrated assessment of this monitoring mechanism. So, but integrated assessment and monitoring is going to be a very complex affair, and no effective methodology has yet been worked out. And secondly, we need quality data. So improving quality, the availability of the quality of the available data is very, very important for governments, international organizations, civil society and private sector to make informed decisions and also to make better monitoring in order to ensure greater accountability. Now, United Nations has already built a database, and in order to compile the international data, international organizations are getting this data from various national statistical authorities. But the one problem is that, for international comparisons, several adjustments will have to be made in this available data. And moreover, at the national level, because there are so many data gaps are existing, lots of guesswork, guesstimations are also being made. So all this will affect the quality of the data which will be available for monitoring the implementation of SDGs. And 2030 agenda requires the member states for regular reviews and monitoring of the progress of SDGs implementation made at national and subnational level. The modalities of such reviews can be made at the regional level or national level. So, in order to improve international comparability and strengthen monitoring, it would be better for developing countries to adopt internationally agreed standards. And they have to strengthen national statistical capacity and also improve the reporting mechanism. This year, OECD has come up with a study report in which the performance of each country with regard to different sustainable development goals are examined as distance to travel in order to achieve each target. That is, it is trying to measure each country's effort needed to cover the distance in order to reach the ultimate target. And this is this analysis is very useful in finding out the strengths and weaknesses of each country with regard to different sustainable development goals. And OECD found that they are closest with regard to gender equality, water, climate, biodiversity, poverty, oceans, etc. And they found themselves more distance to travel with regard to gender equality, education, jobs, institutions, etc. So OECD is trying to formulate a methodology to evaluate the distance countries need to travel to meet each target. And if they can work out this kind of a methodology well, developing countries can adapt these technologies in their context, these methodologies in their context also, so that a better monitoring of the progress made in the implementation of SDGs could be found out. So, in order to effectively monitor the progress made with regard to SDG implementation in each country, we need regular supply of quality data, especially disaggregated data and relevant data for our purpose. And in order to accomplish that, a coordinated effort at the global level, regional level, and national level is required. And thank you very much for your patient listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abraham Jaz. I think this is very complimentary in the sense that we discussed about using the new technology and new methodology for measuring the data and improving the quality of the data. But now, for most of the developing countries, we have another challenge. So many goals, I guess, 70 goals, 169 targets, more than 233 indicators. So we need to prioritize what are the major indicators that we would like to measure over the next 10-15 years under SDG. The collection of data, the processing of data, disaggregation of data, dissemination of data, standardization of the data, strengthening the statistical institution, using the internationally agreed methodology. I think they are all very important, and then this is well correlated in terms of our complementarity to the first presentation. Now I would like to go to our panelists. I think we have plenty of food for thoughts from two presentations and very useful, extremely useful. Now I would like to invite Dr. Murthy Pant for his remarks. I think we have about 5 minutes. He's a fellow in Australian University and Australian National University, and also advisor to the National Planning Commission. So you have 5 minutes.
Thank you for asking me to make some comments and give my views on this matter. The key issue is how to improve economic measurements. I'll go into this topic quite quickly, following 4 standard steps. So why do we have this problem? What is causing this problem? What probably is the solution? How do we do it? So why do we have this miserable problem? Why are we worried about this? on the paper that circulated to us as nicely described that there are illegal activities in the economy and there are legal activities. Illegal activities are not covered in our database, and of the legal activities, some are informal and some are formal. Informal activities are also not covered. And of the formal ones, there are a lot of underreporting of income and other things. So the data that we have got is something that we cannot really trust. Where we are standing is not known. So in addition to the detail of the data that we require for doing good policy analysis or designing good programs, we have on the overall, we don't understand where we are. What's the GDP of the country at the moment? These are some of the issues. So there are three sources of this problem. It's illegal economy, and there is underreporting of the legal economy, and there is informal economy on the legal side. So how do we cover these things? So that is the question. The illegal economy and underreporting of income, in my view, is a governance issue. If there is a really strong government, it will reduce that to a very small level. It cannot eliminate. And these problems are not necessarily the problems of developing countries. They exist everywhere, actually. Informal economy exists everywhere, and there are illegal activities underground economies operating in even developed countries. So this is a problem that is sort of a global one. So leaving aside this governance issue, the solution of that is good governance. So I'll toss that on later on. The key problem here is how to bring the informal economy into the fold of the formal economy. So one of the examples of informal economy is something that is produced in the household and consumed around the households, like the child raising work that's done by women or grandparents, or cooking our own meal, washing our own clothes and dishes, and so on. They are all economic values. And there is really some kind of movement going on at international level that they should be valued, they must be imputed and included into GDP accounting. And unless they are done, so we also have lots of barter trade that goes into our rural areas, and how do we include that into GDP is a kind of issue. So I had some sort of discussion on this matter, and I was a bit concerned that why do we need to include these informal or domestic activities into GDP? Suppose if we include that, impute those, and the GDP goes up by 50%, what difference does it actually make in the way GDP is produced and consumed? In that sense, I really didn't find any satisfactory answer. And the only answer that was given to this question is that it will be useful for people who want to lobby on this and make government and the world aware of those kind of activities that people are involved in. And also, when the economy is growing, if the non-formal, informal activity is growing and there is employing more people, we want to be able to track those things. These are the issues that probably are there, and how do we bring that into the fold of tax so the government can actually extend the tax base and have the same tax rate applied to that and get more revenue, or to generate the same revenue, you can reduce the tax rate, and there will be some distribution implication of this. But in this case, most of these informal activities are small scale ones. They probably cost a lot of money to collect the tax than the tax they actually generate and contribute. And so there's not necessarily a real benefit. And in addition to this, if you assume that these informal activities are somehow proportional to the formal activities, then just understanding how much is the formal activity is probably enough to understand, even if we don't understand the exact magnitude of the GDP, but in terms of the economic value of this, following economic policy analysis, it won't be that bad. It will give us the proportional relationship, and in terms of growth and other things, our understanding will be roughly right. So I'm not very much worried about the existence of informal activities, and so the focus should be sent to reporting of the income and activities in the formal areas. Now, unless the bureaucracy and the politicians actually support, that kind of under-reporting cannot survive very much. But how do we deal with this? Now, do we have a technological solution to this problem? It appears that with the development of these mobile phones, smartphones, and internet, and so on, and then this kind of e-banking and e-payment systems, now all these activities can be tracked. So if we allow this, if we take this technological solution to this, it will control under-reporting to a greater extent. At the same time, it will also control or regulate or bring information about these informal activities, bring this into a formal line. So this is one of the things that we can do. And we all should probably think about converting into a cashless society to deal with this kind of problem. And it may not happen overnight, but the technological solutions are there, infrastructures are roughly there, so we should be looking into this kind of areas. And I have seen that a lot of activities in India are under this kind of mechanisms. And so I will probably have this kind of things from our colleagues. And now I've seen that there are other technological solutions like nightlight, and this has given some of the information that we otherwise wouldn't have received. For example, the blockade actually did a great damage than the earthquake did to Nepal, and what happened to rural India in the non-informal sector when demonetization was taking place. That kind of information is quite important, and it was quickly received from the analysis. So we can use that kind of technology, and also there are some satellites going through the surface of the Earth, taking photographs of all the vegetations, and there are scientists who have already done work. From those photographs, they measure the change on the vegetation, and from that they can find out what sort of crop is growing, and then from that, every week they get these photographs, and then say what is the expected or projected output of various crops in various parts of the world. So these kind of technologies are available, and they fall in the fold of like big data. And then a lot of these big data are being collected by big companies, and the technology is in the making, and I'm not quite sure that we'll be able to use that very often or quick, and so probably it will be very expensive. So leaving that aside and wait for a few years for that big data technology to become publicly available. For at the moment, it sounds like we are losing our privacy and giving it all to the big companies like Google and so on. So that's what is happening. And I have experienced how the supermarkets track the purchases that I make. And then they send me the specials on the product that I buy. So I can see that there is some sort of benefits that they are using, and we're losing our privacy. Now, leaving this aside, in order to improve this data quality, I have got only two solutions. One is that we go for the electronic payment system and cashless sort of society in that structure. And the next one is that given this kind of computing facilities available, and we have got lots of trained people who can handle this, we have to have a very nice statistical unit. In the case of Nepal, on each of the 753 local governments, similarly in every other country, they have their own sort of units at local level. So they can enter the data on a real-time basis, who has left, who is coming in, where is the birth, and where is the death. Now this kind of point that Professor George was mentioning, that people have not been able to register these vital statistics. There's a significant number of people. That should be something that we should be able to solve. It shouldn't cost a lot of money. So by coming to this point, I'm not very much worried about the existence of informal sectors. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pant, for your insights. I think you have given also emphasis on e-payment and cashless system in the economy. And the second point is definitely establishing a statistical unit, basically focusing more on its quality issue, governance issue, and we need to strengthen those kind of organizations. And then we definitely can have new technology inserted or induced in these statistical units in the various parts of the country. So I think good suggestions. Now I would like to go to Mr. Suman Raj Aryal. He's the Director General of the Central Bureau of Statistics, Nepal. So you also have about 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair, and I will try to be time-side. Now just imagine the situation. Just imagine a situation. We just want to pinpoint a real-time problem, to solve the real-time problem. For example, the disaster. You want to make, the optimization very fascinated, optimized dynamic models. If you want to deal with the real-time consumer expectations, we want to learn about the price stocks, real-time price stocks. We want to, hear about the supermarkets, the shelves. Okay. So, someone might think about the conventional approach of the data gathering process. They will rely on the surveys, they will talk about the surveys, studies, census. But if we are talking about the real-time data, this, the conventional approach, data gathering, the census, surveys, will not be able to deliver the data. And this is not, the appropriate way to bridge the gap of the 10 lakhs. Let's just imagine, let's just talk about the ATM machine. If someone, someone is drawing the money from the ATM cards, if someone is swapping the cards in the supermarkets, if someone is analyzing the real-time biomedical registers data, and if someone try to measure the progress of the sustainable development goals in a real-time basis, then he will absolutely talking about the new technology, new thought, and the new revolution of the data, that is the big data. The SDG has promulgated this such type of big data, the source of big data source, big data. I will talk about this big data. Big data is not the negation of small data. Data is data. The characteristics of the big data is just, it is the voluminous, the speed of the new data generation, and the variety of data is produced. We have seen millions of the information posted in blogs in our election campaigns. We have, there are so many the information transacted in Facebook or social media, Twitter. If you analyze this, the information by your own, you can make some assumptions on the election results as well. Okay? Now, these are the new technology emerging for the data as a new data sources. I have used the word SDGs and its more progress monitoring scheme. If we are going to translate the national level SDG concept, plans and programs into the local level, then we are talking about the spatial programs. Spatial, the documentation of the data, spatial information. At this time, it is not, the wise enough to conduct the large survey, taking care of each and every the local areas. And the design itself does not permit to conduct such type of surveys, except the population census or other census. For this, we have to have some sort of small area estimates. For this big data, for example, the satellite images, mobile networks information, social media informations, and other might work in this case. STD is a very the STD includes the interlinked or interconnected targets. It also has some sense of interdisciplinary images. For example, no one left behind. This is interdisciplinary image of the STD process. Environment accounting, it is also interdisciplinary image concept of the SDG. Further, the sustainable consumption and the production, this is also interdisciplinary image of the SDGs. Now, the statistics domain, the statistics custodian of the every dozen states are responsible for the measuring, for the supply the information for the measuring of the progress of the SDGs. For this, statisticians around the globe are mining, digging, and expediting the new sources, new techniques of the different data sources along with the conventional data source mechanisms. SDG, for example, per capita income is very simple indicator. SDG, one of the indicators is the per capita. This per capita indicator itself is interlinked in terms of the indicator management. That is, if you want to compute the per capita income, you should have at least two different domains. One is for the economic statistics, GDP, and second one is the population count. This is for the social statistics. You should have at least two interconnected data sources. So the data integration is very important. Data integration between the environment, domain, data integration among the environment, the socio and the economic is very crucial at this moment. Next example, per capita employed GDP. This is another indicator, which is proposed by the UNSD. Per capita employed GDP. Per capita GDP means it comes from the national accounts. Employed means this indicator comes from the level 4 statistics. So we should have two different data domains for the computation of this. That is the case of data integration. Now, the problem is that, the issue is that, is it possible to have the meet your population for each and every year? Is it possible to conduct the population every year? It is impossible. Even in the United States, even the Japan cannot conduct these populations in every year. For this, you have two options. One option, you have to rely on the projection, or you have to rely on the very matured, saturated civil registration system. If you don't have the very good birth registration system, very good death registration system, or very good civil registration system, then you can use this information as a meter proportion to compute the per capita GDP. So, the integration, the integration of the data sheet, the integration of the data scheme, the integration between the programs is very important. Now, I will just please grant me 1 minute. What is the condition of the SARC nation at this moment? Frankly speaking, we haven't done anything for the big data right now. No country has made any progress with big data at this moment. SARC has established a SARC SCAT consortium, but it is not functioning well. If we could do something from this consortium, we can make some effort, some development from this consortium. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Suman Rajarya. Being the Director General of Central Bureau of Statistics, I definitely can say that he knows so many challenges. He also knows how to use the new technology, but gradually, I guess, in our statistical system, and how to address some of these challenges, the real-time, collecting the real-time data, as well as disaggregating these numbers by geographical regions and number of other variables, and also relying on some kind of estimates and projections. I think we need to have a combination of all those techniques, wisdom and ideas to have a strong statistical system in any countries in the world, especially in the developing countries. Now I would like to invite Dr. Biswa Paudel. He is the Senior Economist in the National Planning Commission. I think you have about 5 minutes. Yeah.
Mr. Sharma, I hope everybody can listen. Is it good? Okay. I think Martin's presentation was pretty good because there was something really new on that. We can use light as an instrument of GDP and other macroeconomic variables. As an economics professor, what I thought was very important on that new insight was, suppose I wanted to calculate the impact of GDP growth on, let's say, international level emigration from Nepal. You have monthly information on international level emigration in Nepal, but we don't have short-term information on GDP. So I can use night light information, assuming that it is available daily, which I think that's what Martin was saying. Then you can instrument GDP growth with you can use night light intensity with as an instrument for GDP growth. So this is really good information. And what he was saying basically was, there are many other variables that night light can be used as an instrument. It's not actually normally for economists, finding good instrument for variables that we cannot measure is very it's very significant question. New technologies have helped us, but in the past also, for example, the most famous example of why we say in 15th century India and China were really prosperous society is because we rely on the information on cities and their population collected by English mission. So we have a lot of this information on the population of cities going back to 1st century, I think. So based on that, we can say India and China were a relatively prosperous society long ago. So in many situations we don't have data. Even in our country, I'm interested in economic history, and I'm a professor at Kathmandu University. So my students need a lot of these instruments when they are trying to measure certain economic questions. But the paucity of data it's a pretty common problem, not only in Nepal, but in many countries. So finding something like night light, and especially if they are easily available to students and researchers, would be really good. So thanks, Mr. Martin. And also, I was, again, there is another example that struck my mind when he talked about this was, for short-term events like earthquake or Indian blockade of Nepal, which lasted for around 4 or 5 months. It's not clear how to measure their impact on GDP, but given the correlation of night light and GDP, and given the less quantity used, less light intensity during that period, we can actually measure how much we lost due to the blockade. And there are many other events that happen briefly, and it's very difficult to measure their impact. Having something like night light is pretty good. Going to Dr. George's presentation, SDGs are still not very concrete, not very concretely defined when it comes to their parameters, like 200 something parameters. Honestly, I don't even know why people have so many parameters. it's nice to measure something, especially if you are talking about economics. It's nice to measure all these impacts with as less indicator as possible. In our country, we are also working to develop the indicators. I don't think they have been completely defined yet. So measuring them will be another challenge, and I don't think the bureaucrats or politicians have incentive to measure them correctly. Also, it's always nice to fudge data and misrepresent whatever the progress they have made. Chinese were pretty good at that in the past, and we also with, even in democracy we have that incentive. So it's nice nice to develop some sort of indicators, especially regionally coordinated, and that can be measured by outside agencies, so that we know when people are fudging data. So I think that's the main point. I don't know if I correctly understood that, but and again finally going back to what Martin said initially, South Asia actually has a very long history of playing with data. Thailand has a very good, Indian Statistical Institute had a really good contribution on data collection. Even right now, Indians have really good data. I don't know about other countries, but I assume Sri Lanka and other countries also have very good data collection. We are also trying. Director General is here, but we are learning. We have some data, but it's when it comes to collecting data, it's really nice to have connection with neighboring countries and coordinate with them so that we have more reliable data and we can measure our economic actions or the impact of these actions more accurately. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Morel, for your very concrete suggestions, and I think you also highlighted some of the challenges of the new technology as well as measurement of SDGs. So we definitely need to have concrete development indicators in the area of SDGs, use independent monitoring system or data measurement system, and also cooperation from other countries. I think they are all useful, and use of technology, I think they are also challenging, but also we need to use them. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Jubair Faisal Abbasi. He is from the Impact Consulting from Pakistan. So you also have about 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, for inviting me. You said that if you cannot measure something, you cannot manage it. And perhaps in the modern state system, you really need to measure things and measure with confidence and be able to tell that something which you are measuring is absolutely correct. And about statistics, it is said that what they show is very interesting, but what they hide is vital. So, having said that, I will try to go through the questions which were given to us, because our presenters, both Dr. Rahman and George, they have eloquently, succinctly spoken about the new big data and issues, how new forms of data are being used to predict and to generate some policy level responses to the problems. And George has very eloquently spoken about existing data. From Pakistan's perspective, what I see that our databases, we have enormous amount of databases, but they do not speak to one another. We have NADRA. NADRA is National Database Agency, which collects data, biometric data, and household level data, individual data, that is part of our national identification systems. Then we have data from FBR, which is with land. We have new forms of data coming from digitization of land records. But at the same time, some baby steps are being taken now in Pakistan to understand the new kind of data which are available, which can supplement the old kind of data. The old kind of data has very specific problems. As mentioned earlier, they have gaps, databases do not speak to one another, and sometimes, the most important thing is, why old data needs some new data sources, that old data comes with a very big time lag. By the time we get results of data collected, conventional data, then the problem is either over or new problems have emerged. So what we really need is to emphasize on big data and real-time data. Now the issue with big data is, I give you another example. We did a research in Pakistan, and we tried to figure out that what kind of data is at this moment is collected at the district health level, or at the police station level, or in the education department. We found that most of the data which is collected is actually useless for any policy decision. So in order to inform policy interventions, we really need new sources of data which their promises are in the big data argument. So the problem with big data is that there's a huge volume. There are 3 V's, we call it 3 V's. One is the huge, enormous amount of volume that comes with data. And then the velocity of data. Data you get in a very, we call petabytes of data in 11 seconds. Then there's the variety of data. We get unstructured data in the shape of videos, text messages, emails, photographs, satellite images, and stuff like that. With the variety of data, so we need technologies, technological solutions to really understand, to go through the life cycle of data. Life cycle of data means that you need effective method of collection, then you need filtration processes, then you need to have storage capacity, then analytics, and then publication and discussion. So this is the life. And now this big data has actually revolutionized the way information is being used or can be used for a number of things. For example, for social development, for new kind of healthcare things, education, poverty eradication. World Bank is using small data and big data both for poverty measurements. They're called SWIFT project, which they are doing. And then uses of big data for business development. Then you assess, you know your customers, you know responses on your products which you market. And then perhaps there are also uses of this big data for political development, that how people vote for certain parties, why they vote for certain parties. Do certain type of interventions really influence voting behaviors? So all this kind of data actually comes from, can come from the big data dialogue. And then there are uses of big data for economic development, for example, restructuring of your revenue system, or creating tiers of your revenue bands, basically, that which part of society should be taxed how much. And this can actually come from land records, from the FBR, from electricity consumption, from gas consumption, and stuff like that. And then major, I think, when we try to measure response of people for any policy intervention, that comes from financial inclusion argument. That once you start doing cash transfers or stuff like that, or introduce mobile money, then how people actually respond to this income shock. Where money actually goes. Does it really go for poverty eradication? And whether it really changes the expenditure patterns of people. So this kind of data is very interesting for policy intervention, that what kind of intervention is required. In Pakistan, I'll just skip a couple of things. In Pakistan, we have tried to incorporate this big data argument for FPR, for taxpayer selection. Now, Teradata, one company, they are trying to use it for better electricity supply, because they are in Karachi. They are introducing electronic metering system, so their data will come from there. Then one very interesting use of this big data is being implemented in Pakistan by the name of Safe City project. They actually, at the real time, they know the traffic flows, congestions, and everything. They have these images systems, and they have been able to track down the hotspots of criminal activity in the city. So big city management is also related with the big data. build capacity of our statistical systems, to build capacity of our information systems, to build capacity of our communication systems, so that we can have a coordinated policy response and can learn from one another. So I think this is possible to do it under the auspices of multinational companies and multinational, because they operate in different locations. Their data usually talk to one another, and I think governments can also take note of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abbasi, for your presentation, especially focusing on Pakistan. I think it's not very different from most of the developing countries. The coordination problem, flooding of data that we see in the communication system these days in media, and number of smaller and bigger organizations collecting data, but we are not using those data very properly. And then you also highlighted the importance of real-time data, because all these older systems, I think when we produce the data, it becomes outdated. Even in Nepal, after the financial crisis of the late 1990s, we were thinking of collecting kind of day-to-day indicators in some of the indicators, I guess. But somehow that has been a bit derailed, because we don't work unless and until we have a new crisis. So that's the problem for most of the developing countries. But you also highlighted the use of new technologies. I think that's very essential in data collection, storing, processing, disaggregating, a number of things, I guess, like traffic congestion. I think that's one of the best examples. Most of the cities these days, I think they use this traffic congestion data, real-time data in all their cars. They divert their car to a different, less congested road. And there are a whole lot of technology that are being used by different countries. Now I think we have come to the end of our presentation and the presentation by the panelists. Now I would like to open the floor for some questions and comments. But I would like you to be very, very brief, because looks like people are already very hungry. And then please identify yourself before speaking. First one on the left side there, and the second one here. I'll come to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think there is a big dilemma here. On one hand, we have this statistical system. Most of the statistical system of the developing countries, they are not even able to meet the basic data needs by the users. For example, in many countries like ours, for example, we don't have our national accounts are highly inadequate, underestimated. The coverage is very, very limited. We don't have a regular system of data collecting, compiling national input-output tables, social accounting matrix, these sort of things. Our agricultural statistics is a miserable condition. These sort of problems. But on the other hand, we have now the demand for the new data, like SDGs and unconventional data sets. And our statistical officers are not really geared to address those demands. For example, neither they have resources nor expertise. Now the statistical officers need expertise. There are environmental experts, economists, anthropologists, all kinds of demographers, all kinds of expertise in this statistical office. We have only study center of economists. We need to change our that's one point I just want to make. Secondly, on the agricultural statistics, there is a lot of, I say that in this data quality is very weak, agricultural statistics in Nepal. Even now, I think agricultural statistics are collected using very, not statistical techniques. They depend on the information provided by the agricultural extension officers from the field. They are not using any scientific methods in producing, in estimating production or statistics. There is a tremendous scope for using the satellite images or this sort of things, and they are not very expensive as well. So it's a very this is the problem. On the other hand, I think there is, for example, CBS, and they can utilize tablets, for example, in the data collection. You can really minimize the cost in data collections. You are not doing that even now. So there is tremendous, there's problems. I sometimes wonder how, we can, NSOs can cope with this kind of new data demand.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pant.
Thank you so much. My name is Ashutosh Dixit and I work as a freelance for the government and monthly electoral value for organization. So my query is open to all the distinguished members here. There are arguments regarding low power measurements such as dollar a day poverty. Some of the scholars feel that it might be a dangerous trap. Could you please reflect how this classification is not making poor in country like Nepal more vulnerable? For example, there is a 13 percentage point difference in percentage population living below $1.25 a day, which is 23.7%, and $1.9 a day, which is 36%. So, do you think that it should be in dollars a day? How would you reflect or different this out?
Yeah, good question. I think there is a third one here. Yeah, please.
I must thank all the experts for highlighting the data gaps and the requirements. But one thing I was wondering, more data, of course, is the primary input that you need for any analysis. But nobody talk about the methodology. Like, despite of all these data challenges, how to best use the existing data. Like talking about, I have two observations. This is the first one. That when you, how do you select the base here? Whether the constant prices is the right kind of depleting technique or not. What are the new emerging econometric revolutions like non-linear models and others to project growth rates? It would have been better to imagine that despite of all our data gaps and the challenges that we face, how best optimally can use these available data gaps to derive meaningful insights for policy processes. The second observation, since we are discussing economic measurement in the context of Southeast economic integration and cooperation, we should also discuss that what are the mechanisms available for harmonizing the statistical practices and the classification systems that we currently use. What are the new region-specific indicators that could be thought of to properly capture the dynamics of South Asia? There are standard indicators that are available to all the regions, that is devised by UN, ATB and others. But is there anything that the region is characterized by the specific feature, and is there any room for developing such statistical regional or sub-regional indicators? Some thoughts should go into that so that the session makes relevance and contributes to the regional cooperation discourse that is evolving. Because most of the time we are least indicated, trade and FDI flow is not just only indicator. There are numerous other indicators. Unless we provide our own original thinking of in the methodology part as well, I think this session for the South Asia, in the context of South Asian cooperation, would not add any value, because data gaps as such is known, and besides highlighting, we should have some sort of thinking to the methodology part, like how best we can do it and what are the revolutions happening in, like Bayesian models and others. So many probabilistic models have been thought of, which captures the real data and the qualitative, the contribution of qualitative variables than the quantitative indicators. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I think two final questions on the middle here, and then the next one on the right. Please identify yourself.
Thank you. My name is Prabha Varal. I'm working in National Planning Commission Secretary. My question is to Mr. Suman Raj Arya, Director of CBS. Some people argue that our GDP not reflect the actual size of our economy. Do you agree with it? If yes, what is your concrete suggestion to improve it? Thank you.
One final question on the right side there. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. My question is rather very simple. I just see from the user perspective. One thing is that the process has been started but not completed, like identifying person. I think if we talk data information, and then use in the decision-making process, the data of the people is the must. So in that process, like Aadhaar in India, NADRA is doing, Pakistan, NADRA is doing very good, and also we have started in Nepal that national ID. Yes, the technology is backing up for the betterment of and fastering and the making information more accurate. So I think our focus should be in one. And another is that, as most of the panelists, they already raised the issue that the data cannot talk from each other. Like our Maldives, Maldivian islands, they communicate each other, but our data we have generated by ourselves cannot talk each other. So I think let us have a new way of doing the things that we have to leave the past way of doing, and then now with the help of technology, and then coordinating different sectors, and then only that will help us to have a concrete backup, and then help us for making the informed decision making that is the urgent need. So, and we spending a lot of money, energy and time, but we are not properly utilizing the data we are generating. So my suggestion would be, let us have the proper data, let us work together to have the proper data of the people, and also then linking with the different sectoral information. And using technology will help us a lot this is more suggestive type of my request. And if panelists have to have some more, I will be very happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'll come back to our panelists and paper presenters. There are a number of questions regarding the challenges in data collection in Nepal, specifically in the agricultural sector, basic data, strengthening the basic data, the challenges posed by SDGs, classification, clarification about the classification of data, like including in the area of poverty. If the existing data is poor, then how do you use this one for policy making? Is there any possibility of harmonizing in SAARC countries? And then there are specific questions about Nepal. GDP not...
My question is to Mr. Suman Raj Arya, Director of CBS. Some people argue that our GDP not reflect the actual size of our economy. Do you agree with it? If yes, what is your concrete suggestion to improve it? Thank you.
One final question on the right side there. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. My question is rather very simple. I just see from the user perspective. One thing is that the process has been started but not completed, like identifying person. I think if we talk data information, and then use in the decision-making process, the data of the people is the must. So in that process, like Aadhaar in India, NADRA is doing, in Pakistan, NADRA is doing very good, and also we have started in Nepal that national ID. is the technology is backing up for the betterment of and fastering and the making information more accurate. So I think our focus should be in one. And another is that is most of the panelists they already raised the issue that the data cannot talk from each other. Like our Maldivian islands, they communicate each other, but our data we have generated by ourselves cannot talk each other. So I think let us have a new way of doing the things that we have to leave the past way of doing, and then now with the help of technology, and then coordinating different sectors, and then only that will help us to have a concrete backup, and then help us for making the informed decision making that is the urgent need. So, and we spending a lot of money, energy and time, but we are not properly utilizing the data we are generating. So my suggestion would be, let us have the proper data, let us work together to have the proper data of the people, and also then linking with the different sectoral information. And using technology will help us a lot to this is more suggestive type of my request. And if panelists have to have some more, I will be very happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I'll come back to our panelists and paper presenters. There are a number of questions regarding the challenges in data collection in Nepal, specifically in the agricultural sector, basic data, strengthening the basic data, the challenges posed by SDGs, classification, clarification about the classification of data, like including in the area of poverty. If the existing data is poor, then how do you use this one for policy making? Is there any possibility of harmonizing in some countries? And then there were specific questions about Nepal, GDP not reflecting the overall economic activities, and the citizens profile, why we are not using it, or why we have been delaying in collecting the citizens profile in Nepal, and that could be a very useful data set if we can combine with other data set that has been generated. I'll give, I don't think everybody has to give answer to all the questions. I'll give 2 minutes to our paper presenters and 1 minute each to our panelists. But there are 2 or 3 specific questions to Nepal. I think I definitely would like to do some favor to our Director General of the Central Bureau of Statistics. You will have 2 minutes. So I'll start with Dr. Abraham Jones. Yeah. You have 2 minutes.
No question was directed. Yeah. I would like to say that there exists lots of data gap with regard to the attainment of sustainable development goals. And we have to find new data sources, better methodologies of collection of data, and also bring in better technologies like this, like night intensity and things like that into our collection of data and monitoring. That will go a long way in effectively measuring the sustainable development goals. And for this, there should be a coordinated effort from the part of United Nations and other international organizations, OECD and SCAP and all those agencies, and also at the national level and subnational level. One of the biggest problems faced in almost every South Asian countries is that at the subnational level, enough data is not available. Even in India, I have seen that when we go for a study, At the district level, data is not simply available. One of the main reasons is that in order to get accurate data, we need a bigger sample survey of at the district level. And because it is too expensive, unwieldy and time consuming, that is not happening. So these are all affecting the quality and reliability of data. And like that National Sample Survey of India, it is conducting surveys every 5 years on a particular issue. And so in between these 5 years, we cannot get year-specific data. These are all practical problems confronted by statisticians and economists when they go about trying to find the effectiveness of the implementation of sustainable development goals. And one more thing, because the collection of data and the methodologies and technologies are more mature in developed nations, there should be a process of transferring and disseminating this kind of data which will be useful for developing countries, particularly least developed countries. And so that will definitely help in making our informed decision making more effective.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Raj. Dr. Pal, you have, I think I'm not forcing.
All right, okay. So the database issue is not only the issue faced by developing countries. Even developed countries don't have enough information. I've been working with the data set, global data set, covering many sort of levels of development, types of countries, cultures, and so on. It's a perennial problem, and it's everywhere. We need to know how to work with the available data, and also we need to have the motivation on the statistical office to follow the standardized practices set out by, for example, UN, and try to get the best we can from the resources we have. And then let's work from this. And it's a gradual process of improving. If we want to get the perfect data, it will never come, and we can do nothing. No policy analysis will come out of this. So I think this is my practical response to this.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pal. Now, Mr. Abbasi.
Thank you very much. Actually, to my understanding, most of the questions can be addressed with one simple answer. The big data argument primarily is that data is there. You just need to increase your technological as well as statistical capacity to interpret that data, so that you can get some policy relevant interventions. So the promise perhaps is in the big data thing, which will complement the conventional data. By conventional means which our statistical offices are already collecting one way or the other. They may interpret data at different ways. For example, inflation data in Pakistan is more related to at the consumer level. So at the retail level they collect inflation. But in India they collect it at the trade level. So it may be inflationary, like statistics related to inflation may be different, but data is there. But most importantly, you can complement this inflationary pressure or effect of inflation on different segments of society by really tapping into these consumption patterns where people spend money and how they are using their mobile phones, and in addition to that, by interpreting the messages that they communicate with one another at different towers or different mobiles. So this is a huge thing. Actually, we have really not immersed our teeth into this technology. Once you go into that, there is another kind of Star Wars over there. So with this big data thing, when you start interpreting data, then you will have one very important thing in our countries, that is a drive towards evidence-based policy. And from evidence-based policy, you will actually influence sustainable development.
Thank you, Mr. Abbasi. Now, I also would like to request Mr. Arya, because you can go on and on because there are so many questions related to DEVA, but I would like you to focus only on two. One is the quality of data system Dr. Pant was raising, including about the agricultural data system in DEVA, and the second one is GDP. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir. First, I would like to respond to the business the issue. Yes, we have heard the issue on the agricultural business. Let's take an example of the agricultural land. Okay, there is some people says that the agriculture, the census, the census report and other the agricultural ministries and reports on the agricultural land is somewhat different from the reality. Taking care of these the issues, last year CBS contributed to special resource on the grid square plotting pattern, and the next one is the dot sampling of the land use. But the amazing result is that the results from these two the highly sophisticated technology-based results gave the same results of this agricultural census and the other the Ministry of Agriculture data. So I think the problem is not the the data itself. The problem is the governance, statistical governance. Now we should look from the position of the statistical governance in the overall governance business. If we are the very most compatible zone from the implementation of the operation of the data stack of the statistical operations, then we can have some sort of reinforcing indicator to check all the things. Then if you put some demo on the good governance, the management of statistics, then I think there will be better results from all the aspects of the statistics. One thing. Second, GDP. I must say, we don't have left anything to incorporate into GDP. However, there is some issues in the informal sector. Since we don't have any specific informal sector survey, then there is some issues in the informal activities. However, CBS has tried its level best to incorporate the informal sector activities through the different resources. For example, the labor force survey, population census, living standard survey, because there are specific portions in the informal activities and the informal employment. So we have used this information. Besides this, we generally release out the national account series. This also gives some hint of the quality of the national accounts. So I don't think our GDP is underestimated or overestimated. Our GDP is very much exhaustive. We have tried to capture all the activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ariel. Dr. Paudel, if you have to say anything, otherwise we can pass on.
I'll just take a stab at two questions. One is the use of the utility of large database. All the statistical foundation, we got large number, central limit theorem, all of them work pretty good with the large database. Okay, this is always a problem for me. To optimally place the mic. Anyway, having large database reduces the standard deviation, and the most common theorems used in statistics, central limit theorem, we got large number, all they work pretty well with the large database. Number one. Number two, all the macroeconomic answers, they illustrate more with, if we know what the macroeconomic foundation of these things are. So when we have large database, we have more disaggregated information, maybe at village level, maybe at whatever level, and then we know better about these things, and then we can aggregate them to the national level. Another question was actually, Prabhati's question on GDP. I wouldn't really worry too much about the imprecision of the GDP, as long as every country is using the same manpower. GDP at the end of the day is a relative term. So a lot of time we are actually more interested about impact of something on GDP. So it's actually a difference of GDP, without that intervention. So in that case, also we're fine if India is using, if we are using the same method as India, or other country follows Indian method, and India and Americans' methods are harmonized. So at the end of the day, if we are underestimating our GDP, they are also underestimating our GDP. So what difference does it make?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Paul. Dr. Rahman, including the question about this classification, I guess, so that would be useful. Thank you.
So, first, thank you very much for the interest and the engagement. I know that I'm the last thing between you and lunch, so I better be brief in my answers. But I would like to regroup the questions in two. I think there were several questions and several comments around what Dr. Panda, I believe, called the dilemma, the big dilemma between having real challenges. Mr. Ariel said that what to do with the informal sector, how to capture it. Having weak statistical offices in general, resources are limited, technical capacity is sometimes limited, including the lack of capacity to work with big data is relatively new. What you learn as a statistician in school is different from what you need now to use this data. And then the fact, as Mr. Agassi said, that there are lots of data out there that are not being used. When you fly in a plane and you're about to land, you fill a bit of paper with a lot of data. I don't know how many countries do something with it. They suspect that it goes into some box and it stays there. So we are collecting data like the police station that we are not using. And so to me, the answer, as Mr. Pan said, is a governance issue. I think there is a governance agenda, a policy reform agenda that we tend to underestimate. We think about policy reform in trade integration, in energy policies and pricing, and we don't think that there is a statistical agenda that is part of governance, that is part of becoming more developing countries. And that involves the technical, having clear framework that enshrines the technical independence of the statistical offices, that allocates budget through the budget process to them, that is clear on access to information, but also on privacy, because one has to get a real balance now with big data of what is handled, and to have a strategy, a statistical strategy. What do we do with all these little papers we collect? How many of these should be collecting, and should we focus on something else? So I would say, for me, a first set of the answers is there is a governance agenda around data that we can trust is a public good. It makes us all think in the same way about the problems, increases trust on what is happening, and I think it's a very important agenda that has been underestimated. The second set of questions and comments I saw is about measurement. How many dollars a day? There are plenty of these questions. What do we do about the informal sector? And these are very legitimate questions. I think even if you say, oh, let's agree on whatever, $1.90 a day, there are so many things that go into it. For instance, in India, they will not include your rent if you are the owner of your house. But that's something that is worth a lot. There is an imputed rent. In Nepal, you will include it. So what the $2 mean is completely different. Or $2 in a city where things are expensive is not the same as $2 in the suburbs where they are less expensive. And there are even more fundamental questions. We all care about jobs. What is a job in a developing country? When someone is working a few hours and changing activities in a seasonal way, is that unemployment? Is that employment? Is it being out of the labor force? And I see that agenda again as a very important agenda to get together and compare notes and define things. And again, going back, and with this I finish, promise, going back to the regional integration agenda is a way of building trust, is a way of having people who are discussing the same issues, understanding that they struggle with the same things. In a region where there is a big trust deficit at the level of the governments, a lot of trust can be built at the level of the people, and especially at the level of the people who inform our thinking about things, and statisticians, economists are part of this group. So thank you very much for being with us in this session. I'm really pleased by the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rama, for your response. I think most of the statistician or people who are working on the monitoring evaluation system and measuring the data, I don't see that much of difference. I think most of them, they usually emphasize on the statistical governance, internationally accepted methodology and harmonization of data, use of new techniques and new technology. Basically, I think that's what we discussed today, to complement what we have been doing or what we are doing. Collection of real data and useful data, and the data should be also utilized by the policymakers in making the policy decisions. I think these are some of the fundamentals that we have been talking about. But today, the specific topic was because SDG is something new. We are also struggling how to measure this, how to prioritize this, how to compare the data with other countries. But in the meantime, how to use the new technology. I think there have been so much of discussion of using the new technology and integrating this one with our traditional system of statistical data and measurement. I think they are extremely useful. If you have any particular question to our particular paper presenter or panelist, we'll have the opportunity to discuss it over the lunch time. Now I would like to congratulate our paper presenters. Both of them, Dr. Rama and Dr. George, for their very illuminating and comprehensive presentation on two very important aspects, and the panelists who are also very knowledgeable and experts in these areas for their comments and response to the questions. Last but not the least, I think all the participants, I see so many people. I was thinking that there will not be more than 10 people participating in the seminar because this is a bit dry, but I see so many participants over here. Thank you for coming and listening. And then I really would like to congratulate all of you, the paper presenters and the panelists. And I think I would like to adjourn the meeting here, the session, and then hand it over to our organizer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Before we conclude the session, I would like to request Honorable Member of the National Planning Commission, Dr. Chudakanta Paudel, to hand over the token of appreciation. Chandrakant Paudel. Our Chair, Ambassador Dr. Shankar Prasad Sarma. Mr. Suman Razaria. Mr. Jubair Faisal Abbasi. Dr. Homurthy Bhatt. Dr. Biswa Paudel. Dr. Abraham George. Dr. Martin Rama. Thank you to the audience for your kind attention. I hope you'll enjoy the lunch, and I hope to see you after lunch and the plenary session.
प्यानिङ हानिदिनु तलबाट भयो छोड